So there's lots and lots of different ways to do study skills. I'm just giving you guys some of the ones that we have for note taking and study skills. So yeah, most of the time you probably didn't have to take a whole lot of notes in high school. I would assume, maybe you did. Well, that's a good thing. Others, I hear they just kind of breezed through high school, and it was, you could take notes, but you probably pass anyway. It wasn't necessarily challenging. And so the transition from high school to college could be a little bit different, as the expectation is that you are taking notes, that you are paying attention and listening, and trying to figure out these processes for the different courses. And so it's like I said, it's a combination of listening, learning, taking notes, writing, speaking. It's all going to be kind of in one. All right. So memory, reading, and notes, they're all related. Okay, so as we're listening and taking things in and reading and looking at our notes, all these things combined are helping you to learn the subject, the matter, whatever it is you're trying to do. So why are we taking notes, right? Obviously, we're taking to remember. We can't always remember every little detail, especially as you look at biology, chemistry, things that there's a lot of moving parts. There's just a lot of information really quick. And so it's hard to remember to do all that, right? And so now you've got to write things down and write it down in a way that you're going to remember it and hopefully choose information that is going to be geared towards your test or towards the practicality of what you're trying to do in the end result, right? All right, so be an active learner to remember as much as possible. So 20% of what you read only. So they're saying that you will only remember 20% of what you read. Okay, that's a fifth, right? 30% of what you hear, 40% of what you see, 50% of what you say, 60% of what you do. But when you combine them all, the reading, the hearing, the doing, the saying, you'll retain 90% of that information. So it can't just be one-sided, okay? You can't just, nice picture, Maurice. You can't just take notes, okay? It'd be great if you just sat there and took notes and just wrote down everything. They're just saying that's only a very small portion of what you're going to retain. Okay, but to fully understand the concepts and to do well, you've got to combine all of those different things. Logically, does it make sense? Realistically, are you going to do it? No. However, do the most you can, right? You want to be able, if you want to give yourself the best chance possible, do the most you can, okay? Over 50% of what we hear is lost in the first 20 minutes to an hour. Oh, that's not good, right? That's kind of sad. 50% of what we hear is lost in the first 20 minutes to an hour. So that means everything I'm telling you now, after 20 minutes, you're probably not going to remember it. So anything else after that, you're done. Okay? So you've got to pay extra attention. You've got to focus. If your mind wanders, you can be here now by taking notes, right? Tips for taking notes. You got to be alert. You got to see what's going on. You got to know where they're coming from. Okay, Bear's here. You got to be. Bear, you good? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to mute you, so. If you guys have any questions, raise your hand or move to the chat if you don't mind. Who's on Zoom? If you're not so there's two ways, right? There's kind of two ways. You've got to physically be here in class or Zoom, however it works, but you've got to also be present. You've got to be paying attention in order to know what's going on. And so if you're just here and you're sleeping or your mind's wandering to whatever, you're not learning anything. So you might as well not have been here. So you've got to do your part and pay attention and focus. So some of that comes with developing your attitude towards your courses, right? If you're here, if you're trying to get a degree, if you're trying to get good grades, if you're trying to maintain your scholarship, if you're trying to see that end goal where you want to have that degree, you've got to be here. You've got to have that positive attitude, okay? Convince yourself that the speaker has something valuable to say, right? I know I have lots of important things to say, and you guys are just here, just soaking it all in. I appreciate that. However, I'm just one professor teaching a very logical, common sense, life skills kind of course, right? But when it comes to something you may not be as interested in, like history or math or science or whatever it is, you've got to convince yourself that what he's saying is important. I've got to make sure I take it down. Oops. Distinguish between listening and hearing, okay? All right? You're listening, it means you're actively doing something, you're participating. You're hearing, you're just hearing it. It's kind of, people say, I hear you, but it kind of goes in the ear and out the other, right? But you've got to listen, you've got to take it all in. Hearing's done with our ears, listening's done with our mind, okay? You got to stay awake. I know it's hard, it's 9 o'clock. This course used to be at 8 in the morning. Yeah, and I said no. I tried for 10, they gave me 9. So we split the difference. I think this course would be optimal at 10 o'clock. When I went to school, it was at 11, which is even better. But for those who are not for morning people, this could be a hard course for you to start paying attention, right? And so I know this course is mandatory, but as you get into other ones, you may look to when you take classes to decide, is that too early for me to take? All right, staying awake. Ask yourself, why is he or she saying that? What does he mean? What is the point? Okay? You're trying to figure out what is important to take from the lecture. Now, all too often, students just take notes on everything. And then you're left with a lot of information you may not need, right? So it's important to understand what exactly am I going to need in order to be prepared for the test, to be prepared for the final, to be prepared for applying that knowledge that I have to something else. Now, I will say never ask your professor, is this going to be on the test? Because they don't want to hear it. All right? So you, unfortunately, have to decipher what is it that I'm trying to learn, what are the most important things, okay? And a lot of times you can do that is if they have like study sheets, okay, that tell you the main points. 2, look to your book, okay, when they start discussing major topics, right? And if they say, today we're going to learn about symbiosis, right? And then that gives you all the things. And then she starts the lecture in symbiosis. Find out what the chapter said that was important, and then take notes on that. If she starts going off on a tangent that has nothing to do with it, then you've got to decipher whether or not, I said she, I'm sorry, it could be he or she. You have to decipher what is going to be the most important things and what I have to learn. Obviously, tips, take notes. The act of writing keeps you physically and mentally alert, okay? Do you guys take notes in all your other classes, I hope? Yes? Do you guys write down everything? Yes? Okay. I mean, you can. Like I said, this might be one way to help you stay alert. But like I said, you might have a lot of information that you might not necessarily need it. All right? Be open to different viewpoints and new ideas. All right? So if a professor is saying their opinion on something you don't agree with, you're like, I don't want to put it down. But it might have been something you could have like if you had to write a paper or you had to write, on a topic, you might be able to use their point of view to compare it to yours and then have that reference point, right? Prepare for note taking, have the proper materials, that's common sense. Review your calendar. Maybe not so much for my class, but other classes you might want to know if we've got a final or a test coming up, prepare for the appropriate amount of length behind it to make sure you're studying and taking notes and all that. Read the text, obviously, what to write down. Focus on the main ideas, write supporting details as you have time, and watch for verbal signals. Now, I like to point out things that I know are going to be on the exam, just to give you guys like little key points. Some professors might, others won't, okay? But you've got to look for verbal cues, okay? If you felt like they spent a lot of time on one subject, it may be because they want you to know that in and out, and that is going to be on the test, right? So if they overly explain something for a very long time, it's probably going to be on the test, okay? Does that make sense? Because it's important to them. If they took the time to put a lot of time and pressure, or a lot of time into a specific topic, it's probably because it's going to be on there. Signal words point the way. So here's some clues, right? To illustrate, for example, for instance, here comes an example. Write it down, right? To illustrate, boom. If you hear to illustrate, you know something's going to be important. If you hear for example, something's going to be important. If you hear for instance, something's going to be important, okay? That's when you should be taking notes. They're giving you keywords to look for to start studying and taking down the notes. Additional words. In addition, also, furthermore, that means there's more information coming. You got to write it down, okay? Enumerated words. The 5 steps, boom. You know you're going to need to write those 5 steps down, okay? First, second, third, boom. They're putting things in order. You got to write it down. Next, right, in a process, in a step, and procedures. Time words, before and after, formerly, subsequently, prior, meanwhile, right? Things. So as you start hearing these words, these should be triggers for you. Like, oh, they said formally. I need to pay attention to what's going on. Cause and effect. Therefore, as a result, if, then. If this took place, then this is going to happen because of, as a result, right? Cause and effect. Oops. Definition words. Right? They start defining words. You probably need to make sure you have the definition down. If you don't want to write the definition down, write down the word that they need to be defined and circle it. Okay? For those who don't like to write like me, that's a lot of writing. I mean, my hand gets tired, it starts to cramp up. You're just like, oh, I've been doing this all day. So if you don't want a definition, and that's okay, listen to it, write the word down, go back and look it up and write the definition, okay? Because you're seeing it, you're hearing it, you're writing it down, you're using that 5-step process, okay? Swivel words. Here comes an exception or a qualifying remark. Put this in your notes, right? However, nevertheless, yes, but, and then still. Okay, I know these are a lot of trigger words, but don't quote the but, right afterwards. It's just important to start committing these to memory, right? Because if you memorize or you start looking at how this actually plays out into your actual study skills, I guarantee you this is going to help you for the rest of your courses, okay? So I'm not just telling you to study for this course by any means. I hope that you're not. I don't want you to necessarily have to learn it for here. I need you to learn it for everything else, okay? But I do need, obviously, I need you to listen and pay attention. And these are all accessible to you guys. Comparing and contrasting, similar, likewise, and contrast. And then summary words. In conclusion, to sum it up, in a nutshell, right? So here, this may be a good time to say, okay, if I wasn't paying attention at all, and I just zoned out, right? Boom, they're like, in conclusion, this is where they're summarizing what you need to know, okay? If you would have to take anything away from that point of that lecture, or that whatever they're telling you, here it is, write it down, because this is going to be important. Right? Test words, this is important, remember this. You'll see this again, you might want to study for this, right? So if the professor is telling you those keywords, then do it. Don't let that escape you, okay? All right, nonverbal signals, visually presented material, handouts, write down whatever it is written on the board, right? If a professor gives you a handout, it's going to be on there, I promise you. In one shape or it might be one question, or something, but it's going to be on there, I promise you. If they put it on their lecture page and it's a formula you needed, write it down, figure it out. Okay, it's all part of that process. So what are the note-taking systems? The Cornell method, the mind maps, and outlines. Okay. The Cornell method, and I've got a video that I kind of want to show to make it a little easier. It's not long. I just need this to go away. All right. Method demonstration. All right. right, and for those on Zoom, if you can't hear anything, it's just music. Sorry, never know where to place anything. Ugh. All right, so after class, you're going to summarize the notes in your own words. All right, I need to pause it. I want to go back. All right. So in summary, so you would take a piece of paper, like a notebook paper. This is just already done, kind of. This is the Cornell method. So all you're doing on the large section on the right is that's where you take your notes. So they're talking about, like I said, they're talking about today, these study skills, note taking, whatever you wanted, would be on the right side, right? So here's where you're going to talk about main points, information, if there were charts or graphs, whatever. So each page is necessarily talking about the thing under that title, okay? That's all you do in class. You just take notes right there, okay? Everything else on the left side comes in afterwards, okay? So after class, you go in and you would recall facts or ideas or questions and cues, key points, vocab words, whatever, people, dates, all that fills in there. You could put some of that in there on the left during class if you wanted to. If you just wrote it down to just one idea, not necessarily that's not where you're taking notes. You just ideas, okay? And then lastly, what were your takeaways? What are the summary? What was the point of this subject or the title? Okay. Lots of students have used this method and found it very helpful for them. You don't have to. It's just another idea. For your homework, I've got like 3 or 4 different things you can do for different topics for note taking. You just have to choose one, and they're all on Moodle. But the Cornell method is the easiest, and all you would have to do is in any of your classes take notes using any of the study skills that I'm giving you, and that's going to be your homework assignment. It's very easy. You should be doing it anyway. But my recommendation is try the Cornell method, see if you like it, because it takes that active listening and learning on that right side, and then having to go back and then do your research and coming up with everything. That's another part of making sure you know and have, the information, what's going on. All right, and so here it is again. All right, so then there's this mind map, right? So basically everything you do, it's creating these ideas, and every idea comes and branches off to something and how they can all be connected, okay? Some people like it, so if they like the visual, if you're a visual, like a very big visual learner, they like to see how the key points break down. So you could have the idea of, the War of 1824 or something, and then you've got that the main idea, and then you put three different mind maps, and then that's, what were the three takeaways, 3,000 people were killed, they gained control of blah, blah, blah. So you're trying to put things in perspective, right? And that's helpful for a lot of our visual learners. All right, so how do you take notes in math? You just write it down, I bet, huh? And that's okay. But if you want to do your best, pre-read the chapter before the lecture so that you can become familiar with the concepts. And as you read, write some questions in the margin so you can ask them in class if you need it. So if you didn't completely understand something, you write it down. If they, in the lecture, if they answered your question, great. If they didn't, you still got that to fall back on. Here's the modified 3-column note taking. So your keywords, your explanation, and you've got your keywords and the rules, and then the examples of how the properties or the, whatever the formula is, and then the explanation how to get one. You're basically, the explanation is you teaching yourself how did you come up with that as a result. So you've got these different properties, or you're having to learn different things. Now, I'm not sure you guys would use this one, but it's just another example of how you could take notes in math. It's called the 3-column. All right. Research notes. Anybody use note cards? No? Okay. The courses that you may find yourself wanting to do it are like history. If you're having to memorize a lot of historical facts, people, places, whatever it is, note cards are a good example. If you're in biology or chemistry, more in biology or anatomy and physiology, if you're trying to learn like parts of the body, functions of the body, all that, note taking would be good because the repetitiveness, right? We don't really have to do spelling here, so spelling, and back in the day you'd probably use note cards. All right, research notes or writing papers and speeches, you can use note cards. Review your notes. Remember that it's most effective to review within 20 minutes after your lecture. So if you had, after class, if you went back to your room, just took 20 extra minutes to study or to recap what you learned, it's going to be to your benefit. Is it realistic, or is it something you probably do? Probably not, but it's telling you should, right? So here's the thing. Throughout this entire lesson, I'm giving you the tools, right, to be successful, or to do better, or to study better, or however, or to take notes better. But it's up to you, right? It's still, everything relies on you. Okay, so if anything else, your takeaway from this is pick something different that you need, something you need to change in your study skills or your note taking skills, and adapt it and do it. Okay. Like I said, even if you didn't take anything, say, all right, after lecture, for 20 minutes, I'm just going to review everything I learned. Okay? One new takeaway. Or I'm going to try the Cornell method. Or I'm going to try mind mapping. Or I'm going to try this math thing, right? Do something different. If you don't like your grades, you've got to do something different to get better results. Otherwise, you're going to keep going through the same rut. Okay? So how do you review for something? Highlight or underline the main points. Fill in the missing details. Now, what does that mean for you? You can't highlight everything. Everything can't be important. All right? You see some people take notes and all you see is highlights. Well, that means you've got to learn everything, right? So you've got to highlight the things that are most important, okay? Like I said, look back to the book. What were the chapter's main ideas? Summarize those points. Highlight them. Underline them. If you didn't know something, fill in the missing information. All right, so if you're using the Cornell format, use the recall column to test yourself, right? So that left side, as you're looking up key facts or whatever, that's the stuff you need to recall. We're not going to do that, but note-taking checklist about your skills. All right, writing. Prepare, organize, write, edit, revise. So this is where you're starting to write papers. Prepare, organize, write, edit, revise. So prepare. Plan your time. of all the excuses. Find a space and time, choose a general topic, gather your information. Writing a thesis statement, that's probably one of the hardest things for most students to do, but it's probably the most important piece of information to get, okay? Because this is what your paper, this is what things are going to revolve around, is your thesis statement, right? And if you're having problems coming up with your thesis statement, where would you go? The Writing Center. Good job, guys. Awesome. I'm proud. All right. So in the thesis, what is the most important idea in your thesis statement? What question would I like to ask about, and what is going to be my answer? Okay. That's kind of all needs to be included in your thesis statement. What are you asking, and then talking about how you are going to prove it or disprove it. All right, so you can organize, you can list your topics, arrange them in some sort of order. So, and because as you're doing this, this is what's going to start forming your paper, okay, with these ideas, these topics. And then you have to write, right? So you got to get started, you got to write freely, write the first sentence, write the introduction. Sometimes that's all it takes. Once you get that introduction that you like, then the rest of the stuff will start flowing. I know it can be frustrating, and that's the hardest part. But honestly, if you've got what you kind of want to do, and the writing centers, that's where they can help you the most, right? It's coming up with the initial, because they can't write your paper, but they can help you form your thesis statement, or kind of what are you trying to prove? What do you want, what do you want to say about this paper, right? That's the stuff they're good at. Write a first draft, break into small parts, right? And obviously beware of your procrastination. Free writing. Writing a paper is like climbing a mountain. What small steps can you take to get started? Okay? And obviously not waiting to the very last minute to do it, because that's not going to be beneficial at all. Save your work, that's just common sense. All right, so in your introduction to writing a paper, it contains a thesis statement, it's the foundation, and contains your interesting points that motivated the reader to read your paper, okay? The body is where everything else you're going to explain why you're doing it or supporting your paper, your information. Obviously, you don't want to plagiarize. When Josh Temples and Miss Julia come and talk to you guys, they're going to talk about plagiarism. Then we'll go into more detail. So to avoid plagiarism, using quotations and providing your references, thinking about the main idea, and then looking away, writing it down in your words, not theirs. And then lastly, you'll need to write your conclusion, right? You got to make it interesting, summarize everything that happened, and then answers the question posed in your thesis statement, okay? Obviously, you'll need to include your references. You can use your appropriate style, APA, MLA, or Chicago. And there's an example of APA. Write your first draft and put it away for a while. Why? That way you can go back and edit and revise it, right? So you've got to do your edits. You've got to revise it. Have somebody else read it. See what they think. Do they like it? Does it make sense, right? The Writing Center can also help you with that. Right? Biased language examples. And then finally, prepare your final copy, double-spaced, 10 or 12, depending on the professor's references. Use the appropriate margins. Don't forget your bibliography, your works cited, and then number your pages. This isn't high school, once again. Don't make the font super large because they want a 3-page paper and you're trying to fill in the space. Don't increase the margins. Same thing. Don't triple or quad space. Professors know. We can see the difference, okay? So follow their standards and rules. Let's try to be, you're stepping up your game here. You're in college, right? So you got to step up to the level and expectations of what the professors are looking for. Okay, bibliography, term paper exercise. All right, we're not going to do that one. All right, there's that. And there's, that was the note taking. Oops. All right, I'm going to unhide these, and these are for you guys. You guys can read those later. So reading college textbooks, and then we've already done that. So what are some top study tips? We'll just go here and then end it with showing you some ways additional ways you can do the homework lesson. All right. So they're saying, here's the different topics that come for when you're looking to study or taking notes. So time management, we've already talked about, okay? But note taking, obviously copy your professor's boards and notes, paraphrase your professor's words, take as much space as you needed, right? So don't just limit yourself because of that one piece of paper in the Cornell method. Add another sheet, right? It's okay to take up more space. Review your notes every night if you can. Create your own abbreviations. So if you can write shorthand that you understand, put it down. Jot down the ideas that the professor repeats. Notice verbal cues. Now this is important, right? We talked about those. Highlight your book class materials. So if you need to go back and look at the highlighter to reemphasize. And that's, once again, that's when you're also highlighting, you're rereading, right? So that's another one of those, one of the 5 that you need to do for actually learning the material. Write down all the examples. And then if you have to, some people like to rewrite their notes to make sure that they understand it, or it's another visually writing it. They might say it aloud and write it and then actually doing it. All right, so reading. Sometimes you got to read more than once because you don't understand it. That's okay. Read it till it makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, then email your professor. Talk to a classmate who can give you a better idea. Okay. Highlight and take your notes. Make your margin notes. This is kind of like the Cornell method. Review what you read. So if you're taking notes on what you're reading, summarize what you read. All right, keep from dozing off. Don't read before going to bed, and don't read in the bed. I know that's a hard one to do, but it's just too easy to fall asleep when you're in bed and you're reading. Read and understand captions and figures. Make a glossary of terms if needed. Pace yourself and pay attention to the key concepts and end of chapter reviews. That might be a good way. Also, a place to start is look at what the review said, right? So if the review had all these amazing things to talk about, make sure that you understand those things because obviously it was important. All right, and then if you want to start preparing for tests, flashcards, rewrite your notes, get help if you need it. Don't cram, know the test format. That's a harder one to do, but you can certainly ask the professor, hey, what can we expect on our first test, right? It's okay to ask them that because you're trying to get a feel of how do they format a test. Is it mostly multiplication? Is it figuring, definition? Is it matching? Is it writing small essays? You can ask the professor that. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, if you ask them what's going to be on the test, they may get annoyed. But if you ask them what is the format, they should be able to tell you that, okay? So that way it helps prepare your mind. All right, am I going to need to know the definitions of lots of words? Or am I going to be able to have to apply concepts? What is it I'm going to need to know? Get all your questions answered before the test. Obviously, if you have questions, talk to the professor. Verbalize what you know. Teach the material to someone else. Be caught up on all your work for the test. Identify your problem areas and take advantage of it. There's extra credit. So anytime there's extra credit, take advantage of it. Even if you're doing extremely well, just take advantage of it. It shows the professor that you're taking initiative and that you have interest in what they're doing. It also makes you look good. Okay? All right, I'm not going to go through all these, but so we did the Cornell method. There's survey and questioning a chapter. So there's these sheets that basically go through. They tell you what to do, how to survey a chapter, and then answer these questions. You, for your homework, can do any one of these methods. So there's surveying, questioning a chapter. There's super fast chapter survey. You take a book, and my goal is not for you to choose something you're not already doing. My goal is for you to actually take books you're reading or notes that you would have studied anyway and apply it to this class. Okay, I don't want you to have to go out of your way to do it. I want you to apply whatever method or however worksheet you want to use, apply it to what is applicable for your classes that are coming up. Okay, so if you have math, maybe taking the 3-column method. Okay. Or if you're in history and you want to use the Cornell method, or if you're in biology and you want to try the super fast chapter survey, or textbook skimming, all right? They have these key ideas. Do any one of these. I don't care which one you do, but apply it to what you should already be doing when you're studying or taking notes, okay? Does that sound like a plan? Does it sound like it's something you guys could do? Does it sound like something that could be helpful? Wonderful. All right. In summation, did that set a trigger for anybody when I said in summation? Because it was supposed to. That means pay attention, right? It's coming up. What are the takeaways from? What did we learn? What are some takeaways from this session, this lecture, whatever you want to call it? Try not to zone out. Okay, that was very early, so I'm proud of you. For the first 20 minutes, you could lose that information. So good job. What else? Stay focused. Boom. Right? If you feel tired or sleepy, give yourself something to do. Start taking notes. It's a good idea. Good job. What else? Okay, be involved, active listening, active learning, right? Sarah, what do you got for me? What was a takeaway for you?
There were a few things. I guess I don't really know.
Go for it, Bear.
I think when you were talking about, my mind just left me. Ways to help. I guess when you started talking about zoning out, that really talked to me because I zone out a lot, like how I just did a few minutes ago.
Okay, understandable. That was your takeaway too. Okay. All right.
Yes, generally.
Thanks, Barry. Sarah.
Like the best way to retain knowledge is like using all your senses, so read, write, and listen. Right. Applying all 5 things, the 20, the 30, the 40, the 50, but when you combine them all, you're at least at 90, right? That's huge. Okay. Maurice, what do you got for me? What was the takeaway for you? Oh, he's connecting audio. Wonderful.
Hi, I'm on Shannon's phone right now. My audio is bugging on my phone.
Okay. What was something you learned? Did you hear what I said?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm gonna agree with the other kids said about zoning out because I do that constantly.
Okay. Cool. All right, Logan, what you got for me?
Using flashcards, I don't usually do that.
Do you see the validity in it? What classes are you taking this semester that you might be able to apply that for? History? Yeah. Absolutely. And then Dimitri, what you got for me? For the math or for Cornell? Okay. Do you think that might work for you? Awesome. All right, and then last, Zalem, what you got for me? Cool. I really like the Cornell method. I think there's some good validity to it. It's just getting used to doing it because we're so used to just taking notes, but it really organizes how you do everything. And the last part, that last summary, using each page to summarize what you learned. If you didn't do anything else, like you had to quickly study for whatever, you could look at the last summary of every single one of your Cornell notes, and at least you would have had some of that information really quick in the takeaways, okay? Anyone else want to say anything else before we end the session? All right, so when we meet again, it'll be Zoom, but if you want to come to class, I'm going to have Josh come here. So if you still want to come to class, that's great. If you want to do Zoom only, I will have a link that I will send again for plagiarism in the Writing Center. And that way you guys can view if you want to view from your room as well. It's up to you. So that same option will be given to you guys again. Okay. You guys, I want you to have a safe and wonderful rest of the week. Please apply some of these skills. Don't forget about the homework here. You can do it. Like I said, if you want anything else, you want your grades to increase, pick a new way of studying, adapt it, and then if it doesn't work, find something else that works for you.